everybody, and welcome to this edition of Artists on the Web Incentive. Oh, actually, I should say initiative. And what I have today for you is a person who I enjoy so much talking to. She's someone that I met at the East End Arts Council, where I was the education director, and she had her hands in several things. And one project was called Jumpstart, which was a really fun thing to get involved with. It helped artists a lot. And I'm talking about none other than Carol Steinberg. And I want to share a couple of things. So first off, let's share her website. Let me do a little sharing thing there. There we go. Okay, so Carol Steinberg has a website. It's at carolsteinbergesq.com. And just so that you can maybe take a screen capture and get the proper spelling, we have this right here. Okay, but then of course, we have the lady, Carol Steinberg herself. Hey, Carol.
Hey, Chanel, it's good to see you.
You too. Yeah, and you know, we were talking off screen, like it's been a minute, and it has been a minute. I'm sorry it's taken so long for us to get a chance to talk.
Yeah, but it's good we're doing it. It's good we're doing it. Yeah, it was fun, always fun working with you.
Thank you, and likewise. So I got about 7 questions for you today, and a couple of them came from some artists themselves. So let's get started with I guess how everything kind of came about. What interested you in helping artists?
Well, you know, I've always loved the arts. My first career out of college was literature and teaching literature. I love literature. And then I moved to New York, and I happened to live in the East Village in a building full of artists. And I was in law school, graduating from law school, and they would all ask me questions sitting on the stoop, you know, and like the art critic of the Village Voice, which some people here may remember, a sculptor. Voice, yeah. Gary Indiana, wonderful. He's still a writer. He was so funny. Like when his cat was sick, he would have lots of drinks. But brilliant writer and interesting. And so I realized at the end of law school, I really enjoy doing this. And so I was also teaching a class at the School of Visual. Oh, I took a class at the School of Visual Arts on photography. And my teacher and I ended up talking about legal stuff all the time, mostly housing, because everybody's concerned about that in New York City. And then a position came available to teach art law, like visual artist rights. And I got the job. So I really love doing that. I'm still doing it at the School of Visual Arts, helping artists understand their rights, because it's not the kind of thing they're going to necessarily spend a lot of time on. But artists of all sorts, all branches. It's so important. I love the arts. It's really important that artists thrive. And knowing their legal rights can really make a difference. And it's like a foreign language to them sometimes. So I like to talk to them in plain English and try to explain things that really affect their livelihoods.
Yeah, and that's really important. The whole rights thing, you know, that's a great way to make sure that you earn what you're supposed to, you know. And part of that is understanding things like copyright, you know, which we're going to talk about. But real quick, I'm going to mention to the audience that well, first of all, one thing I forgot to mention in the intro is that Carol is a lawyer.
Oh yeah.
but not just any lawyer. Because sometimes, Carol, you know, sometimes people think about a lawyer, they go, "Ew, lawyer."
Yeah, I know.
You know, no, this is a good lawyer. This is a good lawyer. And the other thing I want to mention is we mentioned the Village Voice. And for those of you who aren't familiar with the New York scene, New York City scene, the Village Voice was a huge periodical. I mean, all the cool stuff was in there. So anyway, yeah. So Carol, let's go into some of the juicy stuff. Like, okay, so I just mentioned copyright. So before we go into what's right about it and stuff, I think it might be good to go into what people misunderstand about it. So what are some common misconceptions that you find artists have about copyright?
They think it's really simple. They think that it just means you can't copy. It also means if you want to use somebody else's work, if you change it by 10%, it's okay, because there are artists who need to protect their own rights. And many artists, they use work of other people in their work. And both of them, unfortunately, are not so simple. So and I can understand artists doesn't want to sit there with a legal dictionary or a long class, but they can't simplify it. Like a lot of people think, well, we'll talk about copyright registration, which is separate from having a copyright, but they think they can mail it to themselves. There's a lot of information around that isn't correct. And I mean, I'm glad people want to know about it, but it's more complicated than they think, that's for sure. And I think it's the most important thing to know about as an artist, because it really is this bundle of rights that you have when you create work. I mean, maybe should we just go into what it is?
Yeah, you know what? Let's give a definition of it, I guess, and then I was going to ask you how does an artist actually obtain a copyright?
Okay, but before that, the copyright comes from the Constitution and a statute that applies to the entire country. It is a right, I would say right, they say bundle of rights that any creator has in their work. And so that's everything from a songwriter to a video artist, visual artist, painter, writer, any creative, musician, you bet, for sure, play, and as soon as there are two requirements to have copyright: original work in tangible form. Original just means you create it, you don't copy it from someone else, and a minimal degree of creativity. Like a list that, your shopping list isn't going to be copyrightable, but it doesn't have to be really, really complicated. Even an email is protected, which is but like you write a poem, it's protected. That's an important thing to know. As soon as you create it, original and tangible form, you have all these rights. And so next we'll talk about how you protect it, but you have this bundle of rights. So as soon as let's say as soon as I make a painting, right? Let's say I did that. I didn't do that. Wonderful artist, Lisa Breslow, made that painting, right? You can see this painting, it's wonderful. This one I love too. Yeah. So she has 5 rights. Only she can reproduce it. Only she can distribute it. Only she can display it. Only she can adapt it. And only she can perform if that applies. So it's a control and this bundle of rights. So it's really important to understand that. It's a richness, that you control. And you have it as soon as you create it. Now, in order, unfortunately, and there's a lot to it, there's what happens when you work with someone else, and there's work for hire, but the most important thing is to know original work in tangible form as soon as you create it. And you have this bundle of rights that you can exploit, you can use however you want. You could license, you could give it away, whatever, but it's up to you. So if somebody puts your painting on their gallery website, they violate your copyright. And something a little complicated that people do need to think about, though, when your work is on Instagram, when your work is on, whatever social media site, they have to have permission to show, to reproduce, distribute, display, and there's a terms of use. So everyone clicks, no one reads. How many? No one. I can't. I mean, no one on this watching this probably has not clicked. I agree. Apple updates, whatever. Right. You're giving them that right. So it especially when it comes to Instagram, it gets a little complicated, but that's the basics. So then if you want to protect it, it's like a lot of times when people say obtain a copyright, you don't need to obtain it because you have it as soon as you create, but to get this registration, it's a piece of paper that you get from the United States Copyright Office. And it's a stupid requirement. I mean, it's a legal requirement. It makes no sense to me. I should say, this is just my opinion, but it makes it more complicated for artists. But in order to bring a lawsuit, you have to have registered your copyright. And they're great benefits. I call it artist liability insurance, because once you do this, and it's not that hard to do, you have the ability to bring a lawsuit to get what's called statutory damages and get your attorney's fees paid. So if you have somebody, you say you have a wonderful painting and you see it on a website of a restaurant in New York City, that this beautiful painting is on this website of a fancy restaurant. That's not right. So she can go after that restaurant, and if it doesn't work out in negotiations, the fact that she registered her copyright means if she sues, she could get up to $150,000 per use. And she's pretty well known, but say for an artist who's not so well known, it'd be hard to prove their lost damages. It's a really important thing. Plus, I think we should talk about at some point. Now there's a small claims form for copyright. So if somebody takes your work, it's expensive to hire a lawyer. It's a pain in the neck. Litigation is really long and complicated. It's not like on TV where they wear nice clothes and go out for drinks and have sex and that's it. That's it. I shouldn't say that. You could edit me. I say something. These days you got to be careful. So it's complicated. So now there's a process where an artist can go after somebody who's taken their copyright. And just on papers, they don't have to go anywhere. They can just submit it to the Copyright Office. They don't need a lawyer, but they have to have registered their copyright to do that. So, it's a really important thing to do. That's what perfects your copyright. That's what makes you able to really do something with it.
Yeah. And there's 5 points you mentioned earlier about copyright. And I think, those are deceptively simple.
Yes.
And that's probably why some of the misconceptions that you talked about came about, and actually what's great is you kind of touched a little bit on one of my questions, which was how do you obtain it? So, as you said, you kind of have it already, but you need to register it, and there's a key word with the government, and that's where you get the forms. And by the way, that reminds me, Carol, I should also mention to the audience that you'll find links, as I mentioned before, to everything in the description of this video, but I'll also include a link to the proper copyright documentation, so that if you have some works that you want to copyright, you'll be able to do so. So I think with that, that I can go into a question that I had for you, where there's I think sometimes there's confusion between a copyright and a trademark.
Right.
So how is that? What's the difference between the two?
No, it's a great question. So copyright, the whole purpose of copyright is to empower creators, give you an incentive to create, because if people can steal your work, you're not going to keep working. So that we want to promote creativity, and that's what copyright's about, all the rights that you have as a creator. The purpose of the trademark law is to prevent confusion to the consumer. Let's say, well, this isn't a very good example, but anyway, this is a tonic water. Say it's a Attendance Diet Coke or something like that. Let me see if I can find a Diet Coke. I'll be right back.
Now you see, everyone, this is why I love working with Carol. She's fun. Oh my goodness.
Okay, so here we go. So Diet Coke, here's the can, here's the logo. If you spend too much to buy this can, you want Diet Coke. You don't want fake Diet Coke. You don't want Coke with sugar. You want Diet Coke. So this tells you, this is a trademark. Diet Coke is a trademark. And it tells you, you know what you're getting. And so the whole purpose is to prevent confusion, to protect consumers. And it's also really to protect the goodwill of a company. So like even an artist could have a business with a business name. So let's say I teach at the School of Visual Arts. The School of Visual Arts, that name is a trademark, because when you hear SVA, it connotes, whatever you know about SVA. It's a very good art school. It offers a lot of benefits to artists. SVA means the School of Visual Arts. If someone comes along and uses SVA to teach some shoddy course in Timbuktu, that's a violation. That's a harm to the consumer. There's a really interesting case which just happened where artists often use trademarks in their work, and you want to know: can you put Diet Coke can in your film? Can you make an NFT? Whatever.
Right.
So there's Hermes makes a Birkin bag. I do not have one. They cost like a lot. And they sell for a lot. They even sell at auction. So this artist made an NFT of a Birkin bag. He called it Meta Birkin. And he made the Birkin bags, but he put them in fake fur. And Hermes didn't like that. So they sued him for trademark infringement, because there really wasn't a copyright in the purse, but there was a trademark. People know Hermes, very high luxury good. And I thought, well, he argued fair use, which is a whole other subject that people want to know about. Like, what can I use of someone else's work? And everyone kind of thought that he would win, because he's an artist. He's making fun of. But he started talking about, I can make a lot of money from these bags, and it's like really fun to hold up these wealthy companies, and I'm sitting on a gold mine. So that wasn't really an artistic purpose. It was really just to kind of palm off Hermes. So he did not win that case, but I would just suggest people look it up, because it's an interesting example of how an artist might use a trademark, and then what not to do, because there are things you could do. If you were just really making fun of Birkins, how much money they cost or whatever, or the fact that, faux fur to show that furs are really terrible to animals. If he were really doing something, an expression, then it would have been okay. So, so trademarks about consumer confusion, and copyrights about protecting artistic expression. That's a really good question. It comes up a lot.
Yeah, well, that's really good definition, because you know what, I felt I knew the difference, and my definition was way more complicated than. So you really you mentioned early on that you like to try to explain things in plain talk, basically, and that was plain talk. That was a pretty cool definition of that, and I thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
Yeah. Oh, and word to the wise: if you're going to thumb the system like that artist did, then you might want to look be careful about how you're, I guess, using the trademark. And so yeah,
Right.
good point.
Right.
So let's go to another question.
Okay.
And this is one of the questions I got from an artist. So I'll just read it out. If you were to copyright a collection of artwork, is that entire collection what is protected? Is it that every individual piece of art in that collection is protected as separate entities, or is it a little bit of both?
Okay, so I want to show you something. Okay, so here's a New Yorker. There are individual articles, there are cartoons, there's, the cover, there's artwork. So there is a copyright that someone could have in each of those things. And in a compilation, there actually is a copyright. So the law says if the selection or arrangement of work, a compilation is protectable. So the compilation of the New Yorker and the articles, the selection and the arrangement is protected. So you can register that, you have a protection in that. But if these articles are all written by separate authors, and the photographs are by different photographers, the cartoons are by different cartoons, creating the compilation and registering it does not give you the copyright in the works inside. Now, if let's say you created all of it, maybe you have done 10 digital images, and you want to, like Beeple, when the first NFT that was sold, he put all his digital images on one NFT and sold it for millions of dollars. He has a copyright in the compilation and in the individual work, because he created them. So when you register, let's say, you put together some really good articles for artists. You put it together so you have a copyright in that compilation, in the arrangement and selection, the layout, let's say. But the articles, whoever wrote those articles has a copyright in those articles. Now, when you register, they probably will ask you, do you have copyright of the underlying work? And you may or you may not. So if you created it all, you do. But if someone else did, you could still have copyright in your compilation, but not in the underlying work. Does that make sense?
To me, yeah, I think so.
Yeah,
well, that's what I know about what you were just explaining. Ahead of what you just explained. That's about as plain as you can make that. And I think that's an example of some of what can be complicated about copyright. But
yeah.
I think that was pretty clear. And I know it affected me when I made my album in 2006, because I was faced with, well, should I copyright everything individually or just the album, or, so I can understand how that can be a complex question from artists. And I'm glad someone thought to write that. And I'm glad that you had the answer that you had, because it made it clear to me, at least.
So, on the Copyright Office website, and I'll send you, but it's copyright.gov. It's all you have to know. And you there's a whole section on registration, and you put in collective work, and there's a page explanation in plain English too. So you can learn more about this stuff. It's a really good source. It's written in plain English. There you can find law on it, but you can also find tons of articles and little videos too, explaining this stuff. Little short 10-minute video, 2 minutes, 2 to 10 minutes. Yeah. Yeah.
See, now when I made my album in 2006, first of all, I wish I knew about you. And then I wish there were little videos like there are now. I mean, everything's moving along so much, isn't it?
It is moving. Oh, wow. I mean, all the time.
Yeah.
And now there's AI and all the questions is AI, but all these principles are the same. That's the thing. It's not the same copyright principles apply to NFTs, apply to social media. If you know the basics, you can apply it. And that's the hardest part, but it doesn't change with a medium. It applies across mediums and across transformations of things,
Yeah.
So.
And that shows the genius of how they wrote laws, because they understood if we write this in a fundamental way, it can be applied to, whatever comes up in the future. So, let's go to a topic that artists deal with at times, which is commissioned work. So there's this next question is also from an artist, and then actually the next two, the last two here. So so this question is, if an artist is commissioned to do a work, who owns it, the artist or the patron?
Oh, that's a great question. This and what I can use are the questions I get the most and the most easily misunderstood. Back to basics. You create a work. Lisa Breslow created this work, original work in tangible form, right? She owns a copyright. Even if I let's say, Lisa, make another painting for me. Original work, tangible form, without any piece of paper, any contract, anything, without just that. Now, it could be that I have a contract where I say, I'm going to own the rights, but the only way I have rights is if I put that in a contract. So just because somebody even hires an author, commissions an author, it does not give them the copyright. What's tricky, there's a concept called work for hire. And under the copyright law, if you're an employee or you're commissioned to do work and there's an agreement in certain categories, which you can, then it's called work for hire. And that means the employer owns the copyright. So let's say I just saw a film, whatever, any film that you see, Women Talking, really a great film. At the end, copyright the studio. It's not the film screenwriter, it's not the director, it's the studio owns copyright. So it was done as a work for hire. I imagine, I would have to double check that one for sure, but it's an important concept to know. So what gets confusing if an artist, if I say, I'm going to hire you, Lisa, to do a painting, it's still not it's only work for hire if we have an agreement that says I own the rights. And think about, why do I need the rights? All I want is the painting. And by having the painting, I don't have any copyright, but I do own the painting.
Mm-hmm.
And so, see, that's where it gets not so simple, but it's just really important to remember that the person that creates the work owns it unless there's an agreement that says otherwise. So I commissioned a painting right across here. I commissioned this painting. There's this wonderful group called Sugar Lift, and they're wonderful. Check them out. They do great. They represent emerging artists, and they have all kinds of great stuff. And I saw a painting that I really liked, but I wanted different colors. So I commissioned this painting. I own the painting, but I don't have the copyright in it. I just own the painting. So they could do what they want with it unless we agree differently. But that's a great question, and it's a great question. And people forget it a lot.
Yeah. And I'm really glad. So these questions from the artists, I should mention, I got them because there's a wonderful group on Facebook, and there's a little shout out here to Sayville Artists group. And so I had posted a survey on that Facebook group to try to see what is the need of artists. Like, is there a need for artists to have websites built for free? And so of course I had a number of respondents, but I also got a few PMs, private messages, people saying, hey, if you do any interviews of this nature, of course, in the question they said with a lawyer, because I had mentioned that I might do something like that. They said they gave me these questions. So I want to thank those artists for these questions, because they are good questions. And
so tell me the name of the group again.
Oh yeah, it's Sayville Art. Let me just go up. I want to make sure I say the name properly. I think it's just Sayville Artists. Sayville, for any listeners outside of Long Island, is a part of Long Island.
Okay.
Yeah, I was right. Sayville Artists.
Sayville.
Artists.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Sayville Artists, plural.
Yeah.
And there's the person that runs it. His name is Jim. And I hope the audience will forgive me because I am notoriously bad with names. I can't remember his last name, but
That's okay.
Yeah, he's really cool. We've had conversations. So let's go to the last question. Which is, like I mentioned, from an artist, and it too deals with commissioned work. So they asked, if I have to make my own contract to do a commissioned work, what are things I should consider?
Oh, good Lord. Oh my gosh. Okay. No, it's a great question.
Yeah.
I don't know if I saw that one. Well, okay. So who owns the rights? For sure. Because the person who commissions it probably doesn't know about copyright, and they may think they have the rights. So to clarify, they own the work, but they don't own the rights, the underlying rights. You own the copyright, you retain the copyright. Of course, the cost. And I think the most troublesome part of a commission is the approval and the process. It's tough. I had one thing in mind, colors that I love, and the artist that may not have the same thing in mind. So I would create stages where maybe you do a mini painting.
Okay.
And
like milestones, basically.
Definitely. And processes for approval and how many changes, how many revisions. Like, you don't want it to go on forever. The blue isn't blue enough and the green isn't green enough. I mean, it could be a tough thing to do because, like, I'm really picky about colors, and when someone commissions something, they have something in mind. So I would start out by having them show you photographs of things they like, or describing it visually, showing as much as possible, and then create milestones. And how, you want to work out something that works well. It's a partnership, but how can we do this to avoid conflicts, and how much time, and you want to build in, like, if there are, the legal term is exigent circumstances, but say, hey, there's a pandemic, who would think, something comes along that you can't control. You want time deadlines, but then grace periods if necessary. Even another thing to think about these days is what law applies. Only a lawyer would think of that, but let's say you're an artist in New York and somebody from LA commissions you, which could easily happen. New York laws are really good for artists. So, you don't want to have, let's say you get into a dispute, let's hope you don't. But if you do, let's just say in the horrible situation where there's a lawsuit, you don't want to have to go to California to handle that lawsuit. How do you handle a dispute? Hopefully you don't have one. And this applies to almost every artist contract. Maybe you agree we're going to go to mediation first. And you're not going to just go to court, because nobody wants to do that. And, maybe the commissioning party has tons of money and you don't, or vice versa. So that kind of thing. And you can go online and you can find agreements, but never just take one without knowing what every word means. Because let's just say that contract has the term work for hire in it. That's a legal term that means the commissioner has the copyright. So as much as the contract isn't that fun to read, you got to read every word, or find their organizations. I'm going to give you a list that could help you too. Like, you got to understand what every single word means. If you have to get somebody to help you with it, or volunteer lawyers for the arts or whatever, because one word can change everything.
Yeah, devil in the details, right?
Yes, unfortunately. It's a great question, though.
Yeah. So okay, you just said that you can give me a list. I forget if I mentioned in the beginning of the interview that you're a part of several organizations that would be helpful to artists. So are there a few that you'd like to, I guess, read off?
Sure. Okay, so a great organization is called the Center for Art Law. I'm on the board, so of course I'm partial to it. I've got to tell you that. Center for Art Law, and you can find it online. It's was created in Brooklyn, and it's for artists, art lawyers, art lovers. It's got a lot of information. There are tons of panels on all these questions that you've asked me. There are panels mostly on Zoom, because people are on them from all around the world. And how to do an NFT, how to do a commission, how to have a contract with a gallery, immigration issues, estate issues. It's a wonderful resource. And they have newsletters where they explain what's going on in plain English. Like, there's a case coming along on fair use at the Supreme Court that will affect every single person watching this. What's the fair use? The Warhol case, look it up, it's really interesting. So that's a great one. Another great one is NYFA, New York Foundation for the Arts. And it's a service organization for artists all over the world. It's got so many programs. In fact, I met them because of a bar association, because they do professional development for artists as well. NYFA, NYFA.org. So you can get grants, you can have criticisms, you can go to programs. They have exhibits, they have contacts in China and Ireland. It's a great organization. Wow. Yeah. And then there are things like the Graphic Artists Guild, the Association of ASMP, which is, I think, American Media. I don't know, I forget exactly. ASM Association, I can't remember exactly, but it's for photographers. And they constantly keep up with copyright and advocacy. So you're not going to keep up with it yourself, but you need somebody to tell you what's going on. Like, there's a small claims proceeding. They fought really hard for that. So even if you're not a graphic artist, if you're a, whatever, it's any kind of artist, you can get copyright updates from those. So those are the Copyright Office for sure, and the Copyright Alliance. Those two will give you the best information. They have they have tons of videos, courses, help for artists. Copyright Office is government. Copyright Alliance is also fantastic. Like you could find, like I say, 2-minute videos, 10-minute video for artists.
Wow.
So that's my list at the moment. But it's,
Right.
I really urge everyone to find something that you keep up with, because you're not going to keep up yourself, but you got to have a piece of your, self for your professional, because it's your business. It's your business. You want to protect it. Yeah.
Yeah. Carol, thank you so much for that list, because, I guess one cool thing about that is it shows that there's support for artists. You just have to know where to look, basically. And that's why I'm so happy to have someone like you come on, because you can tell someone,
Sure.
hey, look here,
Yeah, sure.
And one other point I'm just gonna throw is you said that this is your business, this is their business, the artist's business.
Sure.
And yeah, so the interview I did before you was a business strategist.
Yeah.
And you just said something key to me in one of the items that he said that's so important. You said, you can't do everything, and you can't, so that's part of the reason why sometimes I think it's good to have a network of people, have help,
Yeah.
and so that, you can say, okay, well, I know this, I can put this into the pot. Oh yeah, I know this. Well,
Right.
So that's a great
That's
point.
really right. And you can't, I can't keep up with everything. So right as soon as I get off of this, I'm going on a Zoom on stolen art. Like people are talking now, like art's being stolen from Ukraine as we speak. So I'm going to go online, and I go to talks about copyright, and talking to your colleagues helps a lot, because it's just really important. And some artists work alone, and that's cool, but stay in touch some way. That's right.
Stay in touch some way.
That's right. Okay.
Well, Carol, thank you so much. And let me once again, I'm going to share my screen, because I want to make sure everybody has a chance to get the proper spelling of your website, carolsteinbergesq.com. And here we go. So yeah, everybody, Carol Steinberg is a lawyer that specializes in artists and creative types, and she's definitely someone that would be great if you have a case or if you have questions. This is what her website looks like, so you have entered the right place. And yeah, and Carol, I thank you so much for doing the interview, and I'm so glad we got to touch base, because we were doing catch up with each other pretty well. I guess we're both so busy.
I know. It's great to talk to you. You're a good interviewer. You really
thank
are.
You.
You
Yeah.
really are. It's fun. It's a pleasure to do.
I paid her $50 to say that.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you, Carol. And everybody, thank you for tuning in. And that concludes this episode of
Alrighty.
Artists on the Web Initiative.